Alright, so welcome to the prototyping masterclass. This is a part of Figma masterclass. This is the fifth chapter. So in the first chapter, we covered the fundamentals of Figma. In the second chapter, we learned how to create in Figma. In the third chapter, we learned how to create efficiently with auto layout in Figma. And in the fourth chapter, we learned how to create more efficiently and more consistently with design systems in Figma. In this chapter, we are going to learn how to add life to what you have created. We are going to learn prototyping, and what you are going to cover is you will get industry level knowledge and working files. So you're not just going to learn theories, but you're going to actually practice your prototyping skills with your task and working files that you can use as reference. Then you're going to learn why most of the time you actually don't need a prototype. That's where you learn low fidelity prototyping and high fidelity prototyping and where they are used, what are they, all of that. Then I'll give you a demo of a file so that you understand what the different types of major prototyping skills that you need to acquire. And then when I say major prototyping skills, I feel what I'm going to teach in this video is pretty much the most useful 80% of Figma prototyping. Of course, there are more advanced stuff. Of course, there are more nuances and stuff like that. I feel this is everything that you need to get going. So let's start with the first part, which is fundamental questions. So first thing is why we need prototypes. See, design in general, I've told you in my previous videos, is a way to communicate your ideas to your engineers. And prototyping helps you communicate it more clearly. And not just with engineers, but with your stakeholders. So your stakeholders can be your users, or it can be your senior leadership, it can be your product manager, it can be your developer. So everybody needs clear communication from designers, and that's why we need prototypes. And prototypes can be categorized into multiple use cases. For example, prototyping for presentation. So if you are creating an investor deck and you want to present your app in the best way possible, so in that case, you will add all your animation, all your transitions, and make the prototype look wow. So in that case, your prototypes would be high fidelity prototypes, and they will have all sort of animation and transition. But if it is for developers, then you may not need to do all sort of transitions and animations. Maybe animations, yes, but transitions not required. You can just say the developers that if I click here, then this page opens. If I click there, then that page opens, and so on. That is most of the time good enough. The only time you need to create high fidelity prototype is when you are using non-standard components from your design system. For example, anything that has to deal with your delights or anything that is a new pattern that does not exist, at least in your design system. So in those cases, you need to create slightly more high fidelity, mid fidelity prototypes. And then when you are actually creating prototype to test or for UX research, UXR is UX research. If you're creating prototype for that use case, then you need to make sure that the question that you are asking and the prototype that you have built are in line. Another use case for prototyping could be, design, brainstorming, or clarity. So this is something that I do in order to just perceive how my design looks on a screen. So I can actually mirror my Figma prototype on my iPhone or on my phone and then just see how does it feel to actually interact with this design. That's one thing. Or otherwise I can just simply click here and see how this particular design works out. Usually this is not the best way to consume my prototype, but if I were to just look at the visuals and test my visuals or just brainstorm my visuals to see whether it looks odd or whether it looks fine, then this is a good way to do. If I want to test interactions, then the best way to do is actually to mirror it on my phone. So again, it can be used for design clarity as well. Next thing is low fidelity versus high fidelity. So anywhere you add a lot of animation, transitions, and so on is actually high fidelity prototyping, which means you have thought through all the different use cases and you have tried to make sure that the prototype looks as good as real. Low fidelity, on the other hand, is the entire opposite of it, which is the prototype is just bare bones screens and you have just stitched a few screens, and it is very fast to actually make these prototypes. Hence, you have gone ahead with this approach. And what you have done basically is if you click here, then open this screen. If you click there, then open that screen, and so on. There is no transition, there is no animation. It's just simple click through prototypes. And most of the time in industry, this click through prototype is good enough. Even sometimes we don't even need a prototype because sometimes we annotate our Figma files in such a way that we can just share the Figma file to our developers and they understand what the hell needs to be built. So we'll talk about developer handoff or communicating our design files to developers in our next chapter, which is the last chapter of the series. But for now, let's focus on Figma prototyping. So let's first look at what we are planning to build. So we are going to learn how to build this screen. Here what you can see is there is ABC and then there are a few cards. If I scroll, you will see two things. This content is scrolling, but this content is fixed. So how do you do that? We'll learn about that. And if I click on A, I go to A screen. If I click on B, I go to B screen. If I click on back, I go back. If I click on C, I go to C screen. And if I click back, I go to the home screen. Here also, if I click on this tile, this expands, everything goes below. So how do you create that? And again, if I click, it goes back and these also scroll up. So how does that work? How do you create such an interaction? We'll learn about that. Then here you can see swipe to action. There is a small shimmer. How do you create prototype of this? We'll learn that. Then there is a different interaction here. So here all this is about clicking. Here you can actually drag and do an interaction. So how do you do that? We are going to learn that. And when we click, we are getting this GIF animation. So in one of my previous videos on creation, I have told you how to actually, insert videos and GIFs, but I'll again do a refresher here as well. So again, this is a bottom sheet. How do you prototype a bottom sheet? We are going to learn that. And then when the user clicks on back, they'll land on the main screen and we are going to learn all of this. So let me now build this one from scratch so that you learn all the different concepts of prototyping, at least the first 80% of prototyping in this video. So you can see that when I copied, when I just alt dragged, then all this interaction lines or connectors are still there. So what I'll do is I'll right click and then scroll down, remove interactions. So this is now fresh. One thing that you will see here is the device size that I'm using is of actually iPhone 13 mini, which is 375 in width and 812 in height. So let's get to that height first. 375 into 812. So this is what my size is. Or let me actually see if more things are there. Let me remove this and remove everything first. I have removed everything. So this is building from scratch. So now we'll do 812. The first thing we want is this guy and this guy. System elements. The status bar goes here. I made sure that there is a fill behind it. Why? Because if my content scrolls, so if I have added this content to this frame and if this scrolls, I want things to go under this. So hence I have added a color. If there was no color, let's say it looks like this, then you would see that when this content scrolls below it, it appears and I don't want this to happen. Hence I have given it a color. That's first thing to note. Second thing is look at the constraints. This is towards the top part, which is how I want it to be. So if tomorrow I stretch this, then this does not move. I've talked about this in the second chapter of the series, but let me give a refresher again. So if I make it constraint something like this and I try to stretch this, you see this is also moving. We don't want that. We want the right constraints. So first of all, the first thing is we have to make sure that they have the right constraints. So I'll pick this, I'll put it here. This needs to go down and I'll make sure that the constraints are there. It is already there. So that's great. Next thing is if things, scroll, let's say this is all of my content. Let's say I have a lot of content and my page size is too long. In that case, I want to know that whether these are fixed or not. By default, they don't come fixed. By default, it is scroll with parents. Let's see what happens if it is not fixed. To test that, I'll click here. I'll click under prototype flow starting point and a flow would be created. Now if I click here, I can see the demo of my prototype and this is the screen that I have. This is how it looks without scrolling. This is how we land on this page. If I scroll, you see what is happening. This guy is scrolling, the content is scrolling and this is at the bottom, which means this is also scrolling with everything. What we want is this needs to be fixed. So we'll go here and make it fixed. We click this, fixed. Now this appears. So now what happens here is the top part is fixed, the bottom part is fixed, the content is moving. So this is the first thing that you need to learn. Now let's create all this ABC. So what is there in ABC? We have a background and then inside that we have 3 frames. So let's say this is what we have as frame. This way to the top. make sure the right constraint is applied. This is the right constraint here, ABC. Let me just copy it for now rather than creating it. So now you have ABC. See, I'm not caring too much about the tidiness of this design for now because we want to teach you something else. So now what we want is when I click on A, it goes to A page. When I click on B, it goes to B page. When I click on C, it goes to C page. And also this guy is fixed, which means when I scroll content, then this guy remains at the top. So for checking that part, let me add a few content so that you can see when scroll happens. Now on this page, when I scroll, what is happening? This guy is moving to the top. We don't want that. We want this to be fixed. So we'll click here, go to prototype. This is scroll with parents. We'll make it fixed. Now let's see. It is fixed. Fine. So this is fine. Next is let's get these screens here. ABC. Now let me just reset them by removing all the prototypes. Remove interaction. So interactions are removed from these pages. Now what I'll do is in prototype mode, I'll click here. I'll click any of this plus. Doesn't matter which one. Just click this, drag it, click here. So now what I'm saying is when something happens on this frame, take me to this big frame. And that what happens on this frame? This trigger. What happens? Tap happens. What is the action? Navigate to this one. What is the destination? Destination is frame A. What is the animation? Instantly travel to this page. Similarly, so this is default what comes, right? And there is a reason why it is default, because most of the time, 75% of the time, this is what we do in prototyping, which is a click-through prototyping. So let me do the same for B. Let me do the same for C. Now next is let's prototype this back button. So what happens on back? User lands on this. So let me put it here. Let me select this, bring it here. Let me select it and bring it here. Now when I look at the prototype here, I can see ABC and they are fixed. If I click outside, I'm getting a hint of the hotspot that these are the clickable part. If I click on A, I go to A. If I click on B, I go to B. If I click on back, I go back. If I click on C, I go to C page. And if I click back, I go back, right? And these are all scrollable. So this is the next thing that you learn. How do you make clickable prototypes? Now next is this part. And here individually, I want to tell you how this thing is created. So we have this as a frame. Inside that there is a title. Again, look at the constraint. This is top constraint. This is also top constraint. Let me actually make it left. Here you can see there is an element like this, which is giving you an impression that there is more text to it. And look at the constraint that I've given it. So it is bottom constraint. So what will happen? When I stretch this, what is happening? This guy is bottom constraint, so it is moving with the bottom. These guys are top constraint and top line is not moving, so they are also not moving on screen. And the text is just getting revealed. This is also top constraint. And what we want in our interaction is we want this guy to basically, open up and this icon to basically move in this direction or rotate in this direction. So this is the interaction we want. And while all of this happens, this list needs to also scroll down. It might sound like a lot of things, but it is actually quite easy. So what I'll do is let me actually copy and paste this content. This is all auto layout. So if I click here and move it down, then everything is moving down. So yeah, you know how auto layout works now. So these are all auto layout. So if I move it down, then everything moves down. You know this already. However, how do we do all of that in prototyping? What I'll do is I'll actually create a duplicate of this page. Next, I'll say that when I click on this, move to this screen. So prototype and click here. I say move to this screen. And on this screen, what will happen? I want this to increase in size. And I want this to rotate. But let me not rotate for now and tell you how this prototype is going to look like. So if I click here, you can see this is the prototype. We go A, B, C here. So if I click here, you see that it just opens very instantly. I want that animation to happen. It is not animating for now. How do we make sure that it animates? We use something called as Smart Animate. So I click here. Instead of animation as instant, I'll click here and go for Smart Animate. And this is fine. 300 duration, ease out. You can change the curve to make sure the accelerations are up to you, but I like ease out and I like 300 durations. So this is fine. And now let's see how this interaction plays out. Click here, click here. Now this opens. Now we want this to also close. So we will do a reverse of this. If somebody clicks on this frame, then take them back to the home or this state. So now again, when I click on home, this is our home. A goes to A, B goes to B. If I click here, this opens a smart animate. Again, one criteria for smart animate is your frame needs to be named similar. If you look at this number, let me convert it to, let's say, ABCD. Now, if I go back and see, if I click here, you see there is some issue here. It is not exactly moving as smoothly as it was moving. What it is actually doing is it actually dissolving this and making this one appear. If I actually, increase this duration, you will see what is actually happening. So let me increase the duration to, say, 5000. If I click this, you see what is happening. One is disappearing and the other one is appearing at the same time. See this slowly, what is happening? One is disappearing, the other one is appearing. But if I make this if I copy this name and make sure this is also ABCD and the same frame is there pretty much. Now see what happens. If I click here, this also goes back. Now in slow motion, you can see that this is the desired animation that we have. Let me also change or rotate it. And since everything is in Smart Animate, you will see that when I click here, this will also rotate. So let's go back to our home. I click here, this opens like this. And if I click back, you'll see in slow motion that this is also rotating back. So let me remove the slow motion because that is not our desired thing. 300 and we are good. So if I click here at home, click here, it opens, click here, it goes back. This is pretty much what we want. So this is great. So now this part is done. Next is let's build this part out. Let me first build this one out. This swipe to animate. So let's take this, paste here, and what I'll do is I'll just duplicate it. Let me remove all interaction for now because we want to be very focused and we want to make sure that here the state is you go from this state to this state. So we want somebody to basically click on this, drag it from here till here. So our initial state is this, our desired state is this. So we create the initial state, desired state, and then we will prototype. We will say when somebody interacts with this element, then move to this screen. What is the interaction? It is not tap, it is drag. So now we are saying if somebody drags from this point till this point, then do something. And this something here is Smart Animate. So now you will see that in this prototype, if I scroll down, I can basically click and drag. And now I'm in a different page. How do I know that this is a different page? Let me just recolor it. So I was in this page, the white page, and let me go here and you'll see when I change this, I'm now moving to the other page. So our prototyping or our concept is working fine. Let me revert it back to what it was. Now what we want is look at what we had done earlier. What we want is when I actually, switch it, then a bottom sheet should appear. Now let me create that bottom sheet for you. So we need 375 into whatever the height is, we don't care, right? Like say 400. We need this element. Let's put it. Now let's constrain it to the bottom. It's already constrained. Push it to the bottom. We need a GIF here. So you can just drag and drop a GIF, or I'll just take it and paste it here. Let me put some words here and some buttons here. Now let's give it some corner radius to the top. 16. This is fine. So our bottom sheet is there. What we want is when user does this action, this bottom sheet needs to come from the bottom and appear here. And we turn the lights off from the background. So how do we do that? We say when somebody reaches this state, what we want to do is we want to move from this page to this page. And what is happening here? We are seeing on delay or after delay. So after delay of just 1 millisecond, which is almost like instantly, once you reach this state, instantly go to this bottom sheet. And this bottom sheet is not navigate to bottom sheet. It is open overlay. So this bottom sheet is basically an overlay. Now let's see what it does. Let's go back here. This is our home. We scroll down. If I bring it here and leave it. 1, 2, 3, I leave it here. This is how it appears. Few things we want to work on. One thing is this needs to be here. It needs to move up, and also there has to be a black in the background. How do we do all of that? We click here. First thing you see here is it is centered. We want it to be at the bottom center. Click there. Can you see now? It is at the bottom. Next is we want a background and it needs to be 50% black. So now the black is here as well. We would say that close when clicking outside. So that is not required, but what happens basically is if I click outside, this will close. We don't want that. So let's go back to our design and let's see how this plays out now. So I drag it here, leave it, and this comes up. Still the animation didn't happen. So let's go back, let's click here and let's look at what is missing. So animation is instant. Let's make it move in and let's choose the direction to the top, up. So this looks fine. And if you want to, let's say, play around with, the animation style, then you can play around with this as well. So for example, you can play around with it a little bit and see what result it creates. Certainly I don't need this. I don't want this kind of an animation, which is a custom spring animation. But if you want, you can have that. What I usually like is ease out and at 300. So this is what I'll use. Let's see now how this plays out. Cool. This is our base screen. Let's go ahead and scroll down, drag it. Now this comes up perfectly. I want this back button to work out. I think this back button is already prototyped, but we'll prototype it to the right screen. So we'll just pick it, put it here. So what we are saying is when somebody clicks on back, then you go back to this screen. So that's perfectly fine now. So let's click this, test it out, go down, drag. This is how it appears. Back, and you're back at this. So this is fine for now. Next thing we want to do, and pretty much the last thing in prototyping, almost the last thing, which is how do you create this? Have you seen what it was doing? Let me show you again. There is a shimmer action here, right? Swipe to action. This is just shimmering, right? In a way, it is giving you an indication that the swipe needs to happen like this. So how do you build this out? So for that, let's see what is required. We need to type in swipe to action. So let's type swipe to action. And then let's give it a color. Let's say it is somewhere here and the color is something like this. So when this appears here, it looks something like this. Now, how do we add the shimmer? First of all, let's deconstruct how a shimmer is working here. So how I want it to work out is, let's say I have a rectangle and then it has linear gradients. And this has this color. This is also another color. Let me change the gradient shape. So this is the color I want here. This is the color that I want here. I want all of this to be of same color actually. This is a bit advanced, but you will get to know what I'm actually doing here. This can be 0 opacity. This can be 0. And if you don't understand also what I'm doing here, that is fine. Try to understand what the general theory that I'm going to do when I'm creating a component. Let's say this is 30 and this is 30. What I want basically is I want this rectangle to just move over this text. If I make sure that this just moves like this and this and this, if it just keeps moving from left to right multiple times, then that shimmer effect would be created. So let's try to build that out. So swipe to action. Let me frame this first. This goes inside a frame. Let me take this, Control X, paste it, make it centered, and we are good. Now make sure that this has clipping on. So all this extra element of, this gradient does not appear. So now we will push it out. Now the gradient is almost invisible. And now we will make it a component. Now this is a component. Now this is the component. Now what we'll do next is create a variant of it. So I'll create a variant. Now what I want in one variant, the gradient is here. In another variant, I want the gradient to be here. So here, where is that rectangle? This is the rectangle. I'll just use my arrows keys to move it. So now this is here. What I want is that rectangle to move from here till here. Think about what animation can I use? What tool so far that we have learned can I use? You have seen here how Smart Animate worked. If you have not seen, please rewind the video and see how Smart Animate worked. Anyway, I'll just create one more example of smart animation at work. let's say I have a circle here and I have the same circle here, but I want this circle to move here. How do I do that? I'll just prototype this like this. I'll say on tap smart animate. Now let's see how that plays out. If I tap here, it goes to the bottom. So what it does is, this is the initial state, this is the target state, and it tries to just move related object from their initial state to the target state. This is what we want here as well, which is we want that rectangle to move from here till here. So what we have done, we have put the rectangle on one side, we have put the rectangle here, the same rectangle here on the other side. Now we will create a prototype. So I'll draw this, I'll click here. Now it says on tap. Do you want to trigger it? No. You want to be on delay, 1 millisecond, which means almost automatically. Automatically smart animate in 300 seconds. Make it move from here, this position to this position. Now what will happen? Do I want from this position to this position? Do I want a smart animate? Let's see what happens if I do that. So, or let's see what happens if I don't do that. Any guesses what will happen if I don't do that? Let's see. So this is the component that I have. Let me put it here. Let me use this component in my design. So what I'll do is, let me just remove the confusion from here. This is my main design. This is what I want here. Let's make sure it is kind of centered. And let's make sure that the same element is here as well. And we'll just remove the opacity, because what we want, or actually we can actually delete it, but that's fine. What we want is when we are swiping, the text just disappears slowly. So let's see what is happening with our prototype. One thing with prototyping is you always constantly need to look at your prototype, whether everything that you have worked on is, fine or not. So as you can see, there is no animation that is happening. The reason for that is it just happened once and it stopped, because there is no loop that I have created. Let me see if I create a loop, what happens. I'm saying smart animate on, not on tap, but on delay. So instantly or automatically, just do this. Say this is fine. So now let's see how this plays out. We're on this screen. You see what is happening? Two things. First of all, the shimmer is not happening in one direction. It is going from this area to this area to this area to this area. Why it is happening? Because you have done two smart animate. We are saying go from this area to this area. That is one smart animate. Other smart animate is your initial position is this, target position is, so go from here to here. Also, the speed is very high. So first of all, let's reduce the speed. Let's click on this line and reduce the speed. So this is 300. Let's make it 1000 millisecond animation. And let's make this a 1000 millisecond animation. Let's first make this. Let's see how that works out. You see this? Now the speed is fine, but you see it's still doing a to and fro motion. What we want is, we don't want this. What we ideally want is go from here to here and then instantly switch back to this one. Same position, and then keep repeating. Go from here to here, again instantly switch to this, and go from here to here, instantly switch to this, here to here. So instead of making this one, which is going from here to here, instead of making this a smart animate, what we'll do is we'll make it an instant one. Now we are pretty much complete. Let's see. Yep. Now we have the animation in place. Still you will see that this much gap comes up here. We don't want that. So we'll do this. We will reduce the height. So the height is 1192. Let's make it 1192. Let's see whether our prototype is complete or not. So we have A, we have B, we have C. All these tabs are there. This is fixed, so that is great. This is opening and closing. This is also moving with the right speed. So this is working fine. Drag animation seems to work fine. This is coming up. The GIF is playing. This is working fine. Back button is working great. Let me actually try again. Okay. This is moving from bottom to the top. This is working fine. There is a black box that is coming up. A background is coming up. So everything is working fine. What else is there? The swipe action is working fine. And you can see that when I'm actually swiping, this text is getting erased. However, I don't like the fact that it is coming over my button. So what I need to do, very simple. I just need to make sure that this is a top layer. So I'll use the shortcut to make it a top layer. Focus here that this will now move to this position. And the shortcut is basically command and right bracket. So it moves to the top layer. Similarly, this also needs to move to the top layer. Now let's see how that works out. Perfect. This works perfect. That's it. All right. So that's the prototype that has been recreated from scratch. So now you know a lot of concepts. Time to apply this concept. So hence you have your task. Please don't ignore the task, because just by watching the video at 5x speed or whatever speed you're watching at, or just skipping bits of this video, is not going to work out. What you need is actually you need to practice prototyping. Even you saw that I have created this prototype, but when I was recreating it, there were many instances I had to cross check. This is one practice which is super important, which is please keep cross checking, right? That is why I always like having a second monitor, and I always like having this floating thing always there in front of me when I'm prototyping, at least. One thing you can also do is you click here, it opens in a presentation mode. So you can share your prototypes as well, and you can do that from here. And if there are multiple starting points, flow 1, flow 2, flow 3, they will appear here. And if you want to remove these points, then you click here, click on the minus, and this will be removed. So that is pretty much everything about prototyping. If you like the video, please subscribe to the channel, because the last chapter in Figma Masterclass is coming very soon, which is around annotation and communication. So make sure you learn everything about Figma. And if you like this video, please subscribe, please like the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.